Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Rachel Dolezal? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of Rachel Dolezal, then I'll move to my analysis. Rachel Dolezal was born in Lincoln County, Montana on November 12, 1977. Her father, Lawrence, and her mother, Ruth Ann, were both white. They traced their origin back to Czechoslovakia, Sweden, and Germany. The couple considered themselves to be Christian. Rachel had one older biological brother. When Rachel was a teenager growing up in Montana, her parents adopted 4 black children, 3 from the United States and 1 from Haiti. Rachel was homeschooled and completed high school in 1996. In 2000, she earned a bachelor's degree from a college in Mississippi. Rachel then attended Howard University, which is a historically black college located in Washington, D.C. In 2000, Rachel married a medical student named Kevin Moore. He is a black man. Rachel graduated in 2002 with her master's degree in fine arts. Rachel and Kevin divorced in 2004. At some point, Rachel started representing herself as black. In 2009, she started changing her appearance so that people would believe that she was black. Sometime around 2011, she darkened her skin and started perming her hair. Her brother, Ezra, said that when he moved in with Rachel in 2012, she told him that people in the area believed that she was black and cautioned him not to blow her cover. Rachel found a job at a college in the state of Washington in 2010. The school would later clarify that she was an instructor and not a professor. When she was there, she taught a lot of classes about African American culture. In 2014, Rachel became the president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter in Spokane, Washington, otherwise known as the NAACP. During this time, Rachel had a history of making claims that she was being targeted because of her race, like she was being harassed because she was black. On June 11, 2015, Rachel was being interviewed by a reporter that had looked into her past a bit. Rachel claimed that her father was a black man named Albert Wilkerson. The reporter asked her if Albert was her father. She said that he was. The reporter said, "I was wondering if your dad is really an African American man." Rachel responded, "That's a very, I don't know what you're implying." The reporter said, "Are you African American?" Rachel responded, I don't understand the question. I did tell you that, yes, that's my dad." Rachel abruptly left after the reporter asked her if her parents were white. As the news of Rachel's true racial identity became widespread, the NAACP released a statement supporting her leadership. Not long after this, a petition was launched to remove her from the organization. On June 15, Rachel resigned from her position as chapter president. In October of 2016, Rachel legally changed her name to a phrase that means gift of God, but later she stated that she will continue to use Rachel Dolezal as her public persona. She changed her name to increase her probability of finding work. In 2021, Rachel indicated that she was starting an OnlyFans account, which is traditionally used for adults-only content. Rachel said that she was going to post artwork, makeup tutorials, fitness content, and images of her feet. It's good to see Rachel get her foot in the door with OnlyFans. I'm sure she will put her best foot forward. It's important that she avoids getting cold feet or dragging her feet, otherwise she may shoot herself in the foot. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1 is Rachel's argument in her own defense. Rachel has stated that her identification as black is authentic, although she acknowledges it is not based on her actual ancestry. She believes that people should challenge the construct of race because it is a key feature of evolving human consciousness. Rachel stated that what she was doing is not a blackface performance and not intended to be offensive. Rachel said that race is more fluid than gender because race is entirely a social construct. She has never questioned being a girl or a woman, but for as long as she can remember, whiteness has felt foreign to her. She didn't choose to feel this way or be this way. It's just who she is. Rachel said, "What other choice is there than to be exactly who we are?" Item number 2, Rachel has attracted some attention for claims that she made other than her claim of being black. A few examples. When she was young, she said that her family killed animals for food using a bow and arrow and lived in a teepee. Her mother stated that her father did live in a teepee in 1974, which of course is 3 years before Rachel was born. Rachel said that her parents mistreated her frequently, which included beating her. They denied her claims. Rachel claimed that she lived in South Africa for a time when she was young. Her parents disputed this claim. In 2002, after Rachel moved out of the family house, her parents and her siblings moved to South Africa and functioned as missionaries. They were there until 2006. They said that Rachel never even visited them when they were in South Africa. Rachel has repeatedly stated that she was a victim of harassment related to her race. She said that in September 2009, a noose was left on her porch. When she lived in Idaho, she claimed that she was a victim of 8 documented hate crimes. She said that she received a hate mail package at a P.O. box on one occasion. When the police investigated this claim, they found that the package did not have a postage stamp. Whoever placed the package in the P.O. box had the key to the box, unless it was a postal worker who was trying to harass her. It would appear as though Rachel has problems telling the truth. It's not just restricted to her racial identity, but something that permeates to other areas of her life. Item number 3 is how people have responded to Rachel's claims. Many of Rachel's claims have caused controversy, but the one that is really the center of attention would be her claim about being black. There are people who criticize Rachel, and there are those who support her. Let's take a look at some of the criticisms and some of the supportive arguments. Starting with the criticisms, Rachel has taken the construct of white guilt and played it to the maximum. She has committed cultural appropriation. What Rachel is doing is the equivalent of blackface and is extremely offensive to black people. Moving to the arguments on behalf of Rachel's position, Rachel has the right to call herself black. Only she can decide her identity. Rachel has worked to obtain social justice on behalf of black people. She appears to be authentic. Rachel was raised with black siblings. It's not like she just pulled this identity out of nowhere. When I look at how people feel about Rachel, in my opinion, when this whole controversy started in 2015, the majority of people were against her. She was viewed as someone who violated social norms to such a degree that she was to be dismissed entirely. She was not genuine. She was just trying to deceive people. Over time, however, I think many people have come to appreciate her commitment to racial identification, even if they disagree with the idea of being transracial, like even if they don't believe that is a legitimate construct. Moving to item number 4, how do I conceptualize Rachel's attitudes and behaviors? This is just a theory, my opinion. Rachel's parents adopted black children. She was close with her siblings and identified with their experiences. Rachel connected with issues that many black people face. She strongly desired to have racial justice. Being white, she felt limited in how much she could advocate for racial equality, but identifying as black gave her a whole new avenue and legitimacy to engage in social justice endeavors. In addition to the advantage of gaining a better position to advocate for justice, Rachel was powerfully attracted to the idea that people might view her personally as a victim. She knew that black people have been discriminated against and suffered many other forms of racial injustice, and she wanted to tap into that part of the experience. She wanted to steal it and claim it as her own. Rachel was excited that people would get angry on her behalf because she was harassed based on her race. From her point of view, this made her an even more powerful advocate for racial justice. She wasn't just speaking for other people, she was speaking for herself as a victim. She knew firsthand what it was like to experience hatred and discrimination. Rachel's need to pretend being a victim could indicate that she is insecure, selfish, and grandiose. Item number 5. Some people look at the case of Rachel Dolezal and think that perhaps her claims have a deeper or subtle meaning or intent. That is, perhaps she's attempting to expose perceived logical flaws regarding the transgender ideology or philosophy. By saying that she is black when she is clearly white, Rachel is pointing out a popular criticism of transgender ideology, namely the idea that anyone can call themselves anything they want with no physical criteria being met. Rachel might be essentially trying to say that transgender is very similar to transracial. Another way to look at this is that the acceptance of transgender ideology protects Rachel as transracial. The acceptance of being transgender ushered in a new era of tolerance that makes room for people who are transracial. In a way, Rachel is challenging people to follow through with their own beliefs. If they're committed to the transgender philosophy, how can they not approve of transracial philosophy? How can Rachel be wrong as transracial if other people are not wrong as transgender? In this peculiar way, Rachel has become a hero to some critics of transgender ideology. She's taken the concept of transitioning to such an extreme that people are now looking with skepticism at any concept involving a transition. This is an interesting theory about Rachel's strategy, but I don't think she's that complex. Her behavior does not represent a strategic commentary on postmodernistic thought or gender identity. I think that Rachel became transracial strictly for reasons related to race. I don't believe there's any crossover to the area of gender. I don't think she's criticizing transgender ideology subtly or at all, or for that matter, using it to advance the transracial movement. This brings me to item number 6. Regardless of whether or not it was Rachel's intent, is the argument that transgender ideology legitimizes transracial ideology valid? I think there is no logical way to escape the idea that it does. If gender and race are both largely social constructs, then who's to say that one domain can be fluid while the other domain must remain static? Looking at the transgender philosophy, the concept of sex is different than gender. Sex is biological. A person is born male or female, but gender captures the socially constructed norms, behaviors, and roles associated with sex. When a transgender person identifies as the opposite gender, they are really talking about living the experience of that opposite gender. They feel as though that gender expression better fits with their identity. One could argue that it's all about being treated and viewed by society in a certain way. Now, of course, there's more to transgender ideology than just that, but experiencing daily life as the opposite gender is an important part of it. Applying the same logic to transracial ideology, what if somebody wants to experience life as another race, and they feel as though the experience of that other race better fits with their identity? How are they some type of terrible person for identifying in accordance with their feelings? Furthermore, one could argue that the debate is academic. It's not illegal to be transgender or to be transracial. If a person wants to be either one or both, they have the right to do that. Whether the person will be accepted, of course, is another story. Legitimizing any movement, which is based only on the beliefs of the individual, is not the domain of science. It is the domain of opinion. Society needs to decide which social constructs are allowed to be fluid and which ones are fixed. Now, some people may respond to the transgender, transracial similarity argument by saying, fine, the parallels between transgender and transracial may be difficult to deny, but Rachel Dolezal is not really transracial because she lied to people about her white ancestry. She tried to hide it from people. Well, one could argue that she was simply trying to avoid being criticized. She was trying to avoid exactly what ended up happening to her anyway. Or perhaps she was trying to manipulate people. This is one of the difficulties with both transgender and transracial ideology. If a person is lying, nothing can be done about it. There's no way to know for certain. Only that person knows the truth. Moving to item number 7. One thing I find so interesting about Rachel Dolezal is that by being a pioneer in the relatively new transracial movement, she has drawn hatred from just about everybody. I think it has eased up over the last few years, as I mentioned, but for a while, it was pretty intense. White people found her offensive. Black people found her insulting. Transgender people believed that she was making fun of them and eroding their efforts to gain widespread acceptance. It was hard to find a group that approved of Rachel's behavior or identity. Yet, Rachel soldiered on. She has never backed down. I'm very curious as to how history will judge Rachel. 10, 20, or 30 years from now, will people look at her as a brave pioneer who ushered in a new era of construct fluidity, or as a punchline who is forgotten as quickly as she was discovered? I think the real problem for Rachel's legacy is that there doesn't appear to be that many transracial people as compared to transgender people. There aren't many people who feel as though they are a different race. Rachel is alone on her adventure through the undiscovered country of fluid race. Those are my thoughts in the case of Rachel Dolezal. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be as intriguing as jumping in with both feet. Thanks for watching.